Hello and welcome to Metro Home Theater Tech Tips. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
And tell us what's going on today, Adam.
Well, today we're doing a special episode on something that we actually get quite a few calls about. And that is, how much can I store on my surveillance system on X size hard drive?
Wait a minute. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck? If a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Woodchuck can't chuck wood.
Then he can't chuck any wood if he could.
He has no wood to chuck.
Okay, then let's ask the important question. What is today's sponsor?
Today's sponsor is the number 8. Because today's the number 8 represents 8 megapixels, which we're going to be talking about our SPY-MNDMWIP8. This is an 8 megapixel IP based dome camera. This is our mini dome, so it's much smaller than a regular dome camera. You can set it up there and you get a full 8 megapixel image, which means you're getting 4K image on your NVR.
So you just beat me to my next question.
Yeah, it does support 4K. So check it out. If get with your dealers, get with your reps, get with your distributors. Ask about this piece, find out some pricing for it. But it's a great piece. It'll get you 4K, and it's IP based, which means you can do PoE power over a single Cat5 or Cat6 cable. So it's a great piece. Definitely check it out.
And it certainly takes us right into where we're going, because the bigger the camera, the more the storage.
The bigger the resolution, the more the storage.
Yes.
Yeah. So
certainly not camera size.
Well, the physical size anyway.
Resolution.
So, okay, so we're going to be talking about how to maximize your storage potential, because the reality is you have the ability to record and store a lot of data, but let's say your client doesn't need to record something at a full high-speed frame rate because it's in a back area or something like that. We're going to talk about laying that out in the best way to get them the most storage possible for what they require.
Certainly we get a fair amount of calls saying, well, you know, I got your new, whatever the part number is. How long can I record on it?
Exactly.
And typically people are thinking of setting their recorders up to record 24 hours a day on all cameras, which probably not the best answer out of the gate.
Right.
But assuming they're doing that, it quickly adds up in how they set the system up as to how long it lasts, because there is no, well, sure, you're going to get 2 weeks, because how you set the cameras up determines.
You can have many different things happening. So, and that's a large portion for what we're going to be talking about today, because the truth of the matter is you may need a full 24/7 recording for your camera system, and that's okay. Or you may not need that. You may just need to record on motion. So for instance, you have a walkway going up to the house or behind the house, or however that works, and you only need to capture when something walks along that pathway. Well, doing that, you're going to save a lot of storage, because it's only recording the time that somebody's walking in that area. So, which is a great thing for that.
And the nice thing is, with most NVR, DVRs, and certainly with ours, the ability to set each camera up independent for this.
Exactly.
Makes a big difference.
And you can even take it even a step further, and you can actually take certain areas. So, for instance, motion recording, you can actually go into the cameras, and most surveillance camera manufacturers out there offer this as well. So definitely check into the cameras that you're using. Of course, we recommend using ours, of course, for the spy clops and everything. But you can go into the cameras per channel, and you can actually like draw an area of where you want to show if there's motion detected in this area on the camera, record that area.
Right. So if you're not worried about the birds tripping it, you can focus on the sidewalk or the road.
Right. So a lot of times what we'll do is someone will have it set up to record on motion, but it's recording constantly because the wind is blowing the leaves in the tree. So you can block out the tree so it's not recording motion whenever it's showing the tree. And that way you're only recording on the grass or on a sidewalk or something else for it.
Where somebody would go, or an animal would be that you need to monitor.
Right. So, hey Leo, the experts are here also. It's great to see you guys in the chat. Again, thank you guys for watching the video. Anybody who's watching the video live with us today, or if you're checking in after the recording, thank you as well. Leave a comment down in the comment section, leave a chat in the chat section. As we're talking today live, we're going to be answering questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put those in there, or let us know what you think about the situation. If you have a certain comment about it, let us know in the comments or in the chat today, and we'll, if it's live, we'll go ahead and see if we can talk about it then. So again, thank you, and thank you everybody for checking in with us today.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yep.
Like us on Facebook, and join us on Instagram and Twitter.
Give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit that little bell notification so you know whenever we do go live, which is really handy because we go live twice a week. We go Wednesday and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, so you have an opportunity to see us live as we talk about these things. On top of all that, remember also, if you have a certain topic that you'd like us to talk about, put that down in the comments, put it down in the chat for us to talk about that. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk about it in one of these videos later on. So
now,
back to our
Adam
point.
has actually done a lot of stuff for show and tell today.
I have.
Which is kind of exciting because normally we don't have this many different things
Right.
going on. It's you, me, and the whiteboard, and
Right.
maybe a little bit of video. But no, you got a lot of stuff going on, and this is pretty cool. So let's start with the hard drive. And let's be honest, the garbage can's a pretty good indicator
Of a hard drive.
of a hard drive.
Right? Okay, so we've got our hard drive here. Now,
And this 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte doesn't really matter.
right, so we're going to pretend this is our hard drive. Now, this is going to be a comparison for H.264, H.265, and MJPEG.
In the original MPEG.
Correct. So now, what we're going to be talking about here is the compression ratio capabilities of each one. So let's say, for instance, we've got our hard drive
Well,
here.
now
We've got
explain compression and how it affects them.
So when we talk about compression, we're actually talking about let's say, for instance, you go to download a file off the internet, and that file comes in a zip file. So a zip file, of course, is literally just a compressed file. The original file, say, takes up this much space, and they have zipped it using algorithms and everything else, and they've decreased that size down to something like this, or much smaller, or they can't. Depending on the randomness of the file, if it's a photo or a video, it's very difficult to shrink it down. But if it's a Word document, they can shrink that down quite a bit because it's very basic. There's a lot of repeating information in there that they can put in there instead. So what we have here, we have our MJPEG, or our MPEG video. This is a video file that's very close to the original video file. There's not a whole lot of compression. You can see here it doesn't change very much. We also have our our H.264 and our H.265. So what I've done is I filled these up with air, and they've kind of deflated a little bit as well. But we're going to pretend here. So let's say
they're all the same size to start.
Exactly. So this is our MPEG video files here. So as you can see, those 3 video files, they kind of filled up our hard drive very quickly. And that means that we run out of space very quickly. So let's pretend this is an hour's worth of data, this is an hour's worth of data, and this is an hour's worth of data.
Now,
well, realistically it's not.
If
but
they're all MJPEGs out of the gate,
they're going to fill it up pretty quickly.
Up pretty quickly. But here's where it gets exciting.
Yes. So if instead you're using something like H.264, we're going to start there and we're going to jump into H.265 afterwards. So if you start with H.264, we're going to pretend here a little bit, and I'm going to release a little bit of air. Let's see if I can do it correctly without too much air coming out. And we'll go like this, maybe. I should have thought of a different way to close this down.
We had originally planned on balloons, but finding those in a reasonably local application,
it turned into a little bit of an issue.
We really wanted to do it with helium.
Oh, that would have been fun. We could get on here with our squeaky voices.
Mine already is.
I was going to say, yours is, it's not too different than you're talking anyway. So at this point, we're going to let out a little bit of air. Now, letting out the air, that's basically the same as us compressing that video file down to get a better storage. This is just a representation of what that's going to look like. So as we get down here a little bit more.
Wow, that's a heck of a compression process.
Got it tied down. So there we go. So we let out some of the air. Now this is in no way the actual compression ratio that we're actually going to be compressing the H.264 video down to. You can actually go online to do some Googling as well to find out exactly what kind of compression ratio you're looking at. But we're also going to talk about how the compression ratio works and how it decides what needs to be compressed and what doesn't need to be compressed. And also how it can save a little bit more data. So now that we've done that, it's much smaller. I have a whole lot more space that I can fit. You want to do that there? So I can fit, so here's our original MJPEG. It's going to be taking up an extra lot of space down inside. But now, if I use our H.264, we've decreased that size by quite a bit. Now again, like I said, the compression ratio is not like this. It's a much different number compression ratio in reality. So when we put this inside here, I can store a lot more data inside there because I've now compressed that data down to be much smaller, which equates to, that's a big word, not that big of a word, but that equates to having the ability to store longer periods of time because I'm not taking up so much space on the hard drive, more hours of time on your hard drive because of that. So the difference, of course, with that is we now can take this and we can decompress this back to its full image so that we can then play that back and see everything at a high quality. We don't have to worry about losing video quality by doing the compression. There's a couple other things that we're going to talk about here in a little bit about how it does that, and we'll get back to that in a minute. Now, H.265 is a fairly new standard. It's been out for a couple years now. But we now have the capability of taking our original image, which is something like this size, and we can compress it even more than the H.264. In actual use cases, what we've seen is anywhere from 25 to 50% small, or pardon me, either a quarter to half the size of recording space necessary for an H.264 video.
Now,
so when we go down to
H.265
H.265,
is very popular in the production world.
It is.
Because it lets them get the file sizes much smaller.
much smaller. And in fact, a lot of the videos that you watch on Blu-rays or anything else
Or
can be
265.
coded in H.265. So here's our H.265. I'm going to let out, let's pretend here we're going to be compressing that even more, and we're going to let out quite a bit here. And now you can see that is much smaller than the H.264 even. So I can do the H.265. I can put many more recordings in there as well. Now the nice thing about this, if you give me back the camera, H.265 and H.264 do a really good job of decompressing it. So we can go ahead and giving us right back to where we started at for the image and have a very good quality image played back to us. That's why they use it in Blu-ray players for movies. That's why we use it in the camera systems for the recordings to have more recording ability. So if possible, change your camera settings over to H.265. You're going to do that on both the camera and the NVR. Highly recommend it. It creates just more capability of storing space there. So that's step number one.
Still with a really good picture.
Right. So that's step number one. Now, the way that H.260...
I'm going to put the hard drive away.
Sure. Thank you for that. Make sure you reformat that as well.
Yeah, it does need cleaning up.
It does. So the way that H.264 and H.265 work, Brent, if you would be my model for today, will you be Vienna?
It's Vanna.
Vanna White.
Not
if
Vienna.
You would simply
That's a sausage.
stand as still as you possibly can and just wave
we're
your
in
hand.
trouble.
Yep, just wave your hand like that, right like that. Okay, so you guys will see that on your screen, the areas that are changing are only where Brent's hand is moving from side to side. Let's cut me out of the picture over here, right? It's just Brent. Now, the only things that are changing are the spaces that Brent's hand is moving. Everything else, his face, his body, everything else is staying exactly the same. So what happens is, if I take a picture, click, took a picture there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, take another picture, click. His arm is in a different location, something has changed. So what H.264 and H.265 do is everything that's stayed the same, it says refer back to the last image of when we've had to update something.
Same as.
Same as. His arm, on the other hand, is moving, and it says this needs new information. So the way that it does that is it just says same as, refer back to a previous image until it's changed to something different. Now, periodically, it'll still refresh that just to make sure that it does have the newest, because every once in a while you may get something that doesn't get recorded correctly and it doesn't show that it needs to be changed, so it'll still periodically do that. So the differences are that H.264 did a really good job of this, but now H.265, the quadrants of spaces on the screen for where things are changing or not changing are actually getting smaller and smaller. So before, H.264 would say, this entire area of Brent here needs to change. This area here of Brent, or probably this area here needs to stay the same. This area here needs to change. Now, H.265 takes it a step further, and it says, this area here, and this area here can stay the same. Now, very tight into where his arm is actually moving needs to change. So that's how H.265 does a better job of saying, well, there's more data that's not changing, so just same as, refer back.
Now, a great way to check this on existing systems in your home is load a disk into a player that shows you bandwidth usage.
Yep.
And you can watch the numbers change dramatically on the screen depending on how active the scene is. If it's a fairly static screen, maybe a sunset or blue sky and no vehicles or action, there's going to be very little data traveling down the pipe.
Right. So you can actually see this really well. We've talked about it in the past, the movie Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Terrible movie. That's my official movie review of that movie. It's terrible. But it's a great movie for demoing and showing off the abilities of a 60 frames per second video with HDR. It works really well. But in that video specifically, there's a scene where you have a blue sky above, there's a tree behind it, and they're sitting on the ground. And when you look at the blue sky on a full 4K HDR display at 60 frames per second, you'll see a little bit of artifacting. And what it'll do is it almost looks like a a little bit of a staticky portion to it. Now, you won't notice it when you're just watching the movie. Again, it's a terrible movie, but great for demoing. But you'll see these artifacts in the blue sky, especially if you're standing pretty close to it, like we stand close to this monitor here in our lab. You'll see it change. Now, periodically, what you'll see is it freezes, and it doesn't change. And the reason for that is the system finally says, nothing's changing here, stop sending new information. So you don't get new information there, and it just uses and refers back to the last information that was there before. That's how it's able to compress that data for an 18 gig image. And again, in fact, next week, we're going to be talking about bandwidth. We're going to be talking about HDMI and bandwidth. It has been decided.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll talk about that next week. If you guys have other ideas for us to talk about, please put it down in the comments or in the description, or you can email us or call us or whatever you want to do for that. So that is H.264, H.265, and the old MJPEG or MPEG.
But that's just the beginning.
It really is. So after that, we need to talk about frame rate. And again, I have another cool little show and tell piece that we're going to use today. So
now, before we get into the show and tell,
yep,
give us a little background. You know, it's frames per second, frame rate, refresh rate.
Right.
Give us a little background on how critical that is to data.
So let's go back to talking about the 60 frames per second on Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. So on Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, we've done a 60 frames per second image, and it looks super smooth. And in fact, it looks too smooth. It almost looks creepy sometimes. It's hyper-realistic, exactly. So when you watch that video, it looks a little off. And the reason for that is because it's running at a full 60 frames per second. Now, what that does is it creates a very smooth interaction with the video. Now,
but something we're not used to seeing.
Something we're not used to seeing. Now, the higher the frame rate, the better the clarity of a moving object. That's the idea, anyways, of a higher frame rate. So when you're watching a football game, or you're watching a baseball game, or any kind of sports game where or a race game, or you're watching a NASCAR race, or whatever it may be, when you see those objects or whatever it is flying past the screen, a higher frame rate is going to give you less of a stretching or ghosting, or what's another word I'm looking for?
Schmearing.
Schmearing, there you go, that's a good word for it, effect on the object that's moving past it. So if you have a 60 frames per second image of a race car driving past a screen, and when you freeze that image on one frame, it's going to be a much clearer image than if you were on, say, a lower frame rate. So let's say you go from 60 to 30. A 60 frame rate is going to do pretty good. A 30 frame rate is going to have a little bit of smearing in there, or a little bit of stretching, motion blur. That's what I was looking for, a little bit of motion blur on it. Now, as we get further and further on, now the thing is that 60 frames per second, that is literally 60 images, so 60 pictures every second. So when we go to 30, that's half the number of images every second. So we are literally cutting the data bandwidth requirements by half.
Now, the next thing to remember is when you look at 10, 24, 30, 60, on the frame is twice the length of time at 30 frames per second. That's why it notices the blur in the motion.
Right. So the aperture of the camera.
It's not just 30 frames per second.
Correct.
The camera is now kept open for twice the length of time that a 60 frame per second.
Exactly. So how this correlates into our surveillance camera systems. And again, guys, if you have any questions about anything I'm talking about today, please put it down in the comments below. Or if you have a comment about if I'm saying something wrong, let me know, because...
And by the way, gamers love
higher frame rates. Exactly. So let us know in the comments down below. But all that to say, when we look at a surveillance system, the reality is the surveillance system is there to capture if something happens. So let's say you are recording a 4-channel camera system and you want it to record non-stop. You just want it to record 24 hours a day. Out of the box, most of those cameras are going to come out with a 20 to 15 frames per second image, which is much lower than what you would see in cinema or TV or even the 60 frames per second videos or games.
Old school movies were 24 frames per second for film. Video is 30 to 60.
Right.
With digital, they prefer 60.
Yeah.
Because the crisper the picture, the more obvious the motional artifact.
So, all that to say, the most important thing with the frame rate is deciding how high do you really need it. So what we did was we had our video department help us out, and they generated this video for us. Now, you may have seen something similar online. There's a great GIF animation of it, but they created this for us as well. I'm going to pull it up here on the one screen, and I'll get it ready. And I'm going to pause it there, and we will switch over to that one. Oh, let's do that here. Okay, so what you'll see here on your screen, you should be seeing a 60 frames, 30 frames, 24, 15, and 10. Now, I'm going to hit play, and you'll see as it moves across the screen, the 60 frames is nice and smooth. As you go down to the lower frame rates, you will notice that it gets more and more jagged or jittery. And you'll also see that there's a little bit of a motion blur effect happening. So to talk about this, the reality is the higher frame rates will give you a clearer motion image, whereas the lower frame rates won't give you that. They may give you a little bit of a motion blur, but in the most part, it's still an image at that time. So to give yourself the most storage capabilities out of your system, you really kind of want to find out where the requirements are. The sweet spot. So for instance, let's use the house for instance again. We've got 4 cameras. We have one camera that's in the backyard. We have one camera that's at the driveway, one at the front door, and one that's maybe on the side of the house. So in that layout, the backyard, I don't really care about what's going on back there or the specific motion of something happening.
Because it's a large enough area, you're going to catch it.
I'm going to catch it. So I'm going to put that back there. I just want to know if something was there at some time. I still have it recording 24/7. However, it doesn't really matter to me what the motion is happening in the backyard. So what we do instead, just wanted to make sure, what we do instead is in the backyard, we lower the frame rates down. So we're going to take it, instead of a 20 or 15, we're going to take it down to a 10. The reason that we do that is, again, I don't need to see the motion of something. I just need to see the something that was back there. Now, the front driveway or the front door, I want to see the motion of something. I want to see the way that that person walks as he goes up there. Does he have a limp? Is there something to his walking, swagger, or the it was the silly walks with
giant Monty Python.
Monty Python.
Ministry of Silly Walks.
Ministry of Silly Walks. Well, I want to see if he's doing some kind of silly walk and what that looks like, because let's say something, God forbid, something terrible happens, and you have to get that information to the police. It helps them to know, how is he walking? Does he have a limp? That lets them know how to profile that person to find out who they are. So that will make things a whole lot easier for that. So when we look at which camera needs which information, a camera that's just catching a very large area that it doesn't really matter exactly the motion of the person coming up to the door or anything like that, put it on a lower frame rate, because the lower frame rate, you just need to catch that something was there. Now, if you're trying to catch something, let's use a store, for instance, somebody walking in the front door of the store, put that at a higher frame rate, because we want to see...
Particularly the cash drawer.
The cash drawer. We want to see what that person looks like as they're walking. We want to see what they look like as they move. Does their arm do a certain thing when they go to pick something up? Does something happen that way? Put a higher frame rate there. Because what we're doing at that point is we're giving ourselves the ability to have more storage on the camera that doesn't require the motion at the lower frame rate. We are taking up more storage on the one that we need the higher motion on there. So it kind of equals out, but it gives us that ability to where I'm not just increasing the one camera and keeping the other camera at the same spot. I'm lowering the other camera to help mitigate that difference in there to give us more storage overall. So that's where frame rate comes into play. The last piece in all of this is the camera hierarchy. So with our camera hierarchy, it's the same idea. Where is the camera? Where is the most important camera in the entire system? You really kind of want to number that out. And the reason for that is, again, you want to find out, should I put this at a higher frame rate or should I put it at a lower frame rate? If it's a very important camera that you want to have at, again, using a storefront, for instance, I want to see that person who's walking in the front door. That's the most important camera, because I need to know what the heck, who is coming into the store and who is leaving the store. A lot of times you'll see on a door frame at a storefront, they'll have like a ruler out there to kind of give people an easy ability to find a height, a height to find out, okay, well, the guy was, in the green section, which is between 5 and 6 feet. So that gives them the ability to do that. Putting that motion camera there, the higher frame rate, helps also to show them, again, how is he walking? How is he running out the front door? Is he doing a certain stance or move that'll help give away who that person is? Now the camera.
Do you have a dance when you leave a store?
I do. I like to do the what's it called? The Charleston.
Not the end zone, the Charleston.
Yeah, Charleston. Yeah, okay. I know. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. Bad jokes are bad. So now the one that's in, let's say the camera that's back in the stock room. That stock room never changes. And so there's not a whole lot happening back there. I just need to know, did somebody go back in the stock room? Because more likely they're going to go in the stock room, grab something, go back out the front door before they go anywhere else. Or again, put one at the back door and you can catch them there. So
cash drawer does need to be a high refresh rate, because it's not just with the drawer open. You want to see, did they take money out or put money in?
Right. So again, that 10 frames per second, remember, it's 10 pictures every second. If you take your phone and you go into the high flash rate, you can go in there, you can do 10 frames per second. You can see what that looks like. 10 frames per second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In a second. Now that didn't take me a second, it took me probably about 3 or 4 seconds. But the point is that having that happen within 1 second is still enough data to find out who that person is and what's happening in an area where I don't need to know what's going on. Now, there's one last piece to all of this.
Now, just one of the things we tried to do yesterday is we tried to find a 600 beat per minute metronome.
Yes.
Which is actually 10 frames
per second. Yeah.
And strangely enough, you can't.
I can't. Yeah. Now, granted, 600 beats per minute is really, really fast.
But
most people are not going to be doing anything with that.
But think of this. This is pictures that are being taken.
Right.
This is 500 beats per minute.
Yes.
Which is not 600. So this is about 8.5 frames per second.
Right. So you can hear it's very quick.
That's still pretty fast.
Yes. So that gives you an idea, and the amount of time that that's been playing, if I move my hand across the screen, you can say that's about 8.5 frames per second as I move my hand across, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
You're still getting the motion.
You're still getting most of the motion. Now, there's one last point in all of this. To maximize the amount of storage, we need to talk about the pathway that you take that you put the camera on. So if there's a lot of motion, let's say you have your camera set up to record constant, again, 24 hours a day. I love 24 hours a day, because it makes sure that I'm catching everything. I don't have to worry about the programming of the camera that will it or will it not capture the motion that's happening, or do I just want it to record everything? That's the way that I like to set up my camera systems, and I just play around with the frame rates and make sure that I'm using something like H.265. So let's say I've got 2 cameras. I have one camera that's in here in my lab. Maybe I'm testing it for some reason. I have it facing just a very static area. Nothing's changing in that area. Let's say I'm just facing it here, right? At that point, nothing's really happening. I take the other camera and I put it out in our hallway where there is constant traffic in that area. In that hallway, what's going to happen? They're both recording all the time. They're both recording 24/7. However, nothing is changing on this camera, whereas that camera is changing about once a minute at least. So when I go back to my recordings, I find out that that camera has taken up about 30 megs worth of data recording nothing new. Because again, it's going refer back, refer back, refer back. Or call back or whatever.
Same
as. Then we have the other camera that's constantly changing. So we go back to the thing where we had Brent moving his hand back and forth, just waving.
Or not.
Wave to the nice people. Or not. And so if nothing is changing, nothing is happening, then it's just saying refer back, refer back, refer back, or same as, same as. The camera that's out there in the hallway instead is going to be capturing, it's going to be having new information, new data every minute or however many times a person walks past that screen. So when I look at the storage of that camera, it's much higher, and from 30 megs or 300 megs to 3 gigs an hour. So we need to look at where we are having the most motion. Now, let's say, for instance, both cameras are at 15 frames per second. You're still going to run into the same thing because you don't have on that camera the difference of it's changing constantly, whereas this camera, it's just saying refer back, refer back, refer back. So when you look at all of this, find out, I know that that one in there is going to have a lot more traffic, but I don't really care about what it looks like the person is walking. I'm going to decrease the frame rate of that one out there much lower. Or this one here, it's not doing anything anyways. I'm going to decrease that even further. I just need to catch every once in a while if something changes. You really need to look at the layout of your system, find out from your client where they need to see the video, where they need to see the interaction of the people that they're trying to watch and monitor, and if they need to have the higher frame rates in that area. These are all questions that you need to work with your client. This isn't something that do it this way and you're going to get 3 weeks worth of recording. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
It's also not uncommon, as with lighting programming and everything else, you start off fairly static, okay, everything's the same, and you realize, okay, there's not much happening here, but there's a lot happening here.
Right.
So you need to be a little bit fluid in the first couple of weeks.
Yes.
With your installation, with your client, let them know that it's going to take a couple of weeks to find out the traffic patterns unless they're very sure out of the gate.
Right. And some people are, and that's okay. If they know for a fact, they know exactly what they want out of it, great, go for it, get it set up that way and you're good to go. But instead, if you help your clients to realize that it's okay if we put this together this way to start off with, we can come back in there and modify it and get it where you want it to be. You look like a professional when you do it that way, and you are a professional doing it that way because that's how it should be done. It should be something that you set up in one way firsthand because you know as a professional, this is really how we should start. Then as time progresses, they can say, well, this camera, I don't really care too much about the frame rates. Let's go ahead and decrease that, maybe get a little bit more storage out of it on the rest of it. So there's a couple nice tools out there to also
come back into the job site.
Exactly. You can go ahead and be first in, get back on the job site. They may have something else that they want to do. Maybe they want to increase the number of cameras. Gives you a reason to come back in there and talk to them. Exactly. So now again, after all of that, let's say they still need the highest frame rate in certain scenarios, but the hard drive that comes with it just isn't enough to give them more than the first couple days worth of storage. You can always look at the possibility of replacing the hard drive or adding a hard drive to the NVR or DVR. With ours, of course, we have all that listed on the website, metrohometheater.com. You can find out the capabilities of the NVRs and DVRs and how much storage you need out of it. So make sure you go on there and take a look at that as well. So you can see that can I add an extra hard drive? Can I increase the size of the hard drive that's in it? Maybe replace it with a larger one? In most cases, you can. So definitely check that out. Give us a call, 386-492-8584. To ask us about it if you have any questions about it. As always, we love to help out with that, especially if it's before anything has actually started. We love helping design and set up a system with you as well. So give us a call if you have any questions about that. Again, our phone number here is 386-492-8584. And then we can talk about that on our tech support with that as well. So,
wow.
Yeah, a lot of information, a lot of stuff to look at. The main point in all of this is just you need to work with your clients, leading questions, having them, you need to ask the questions to get the responses that you need out of them. Most clients have no idea. Most clients are going to say, I want to record this and I want to have this much storage. Well, client, this is what needs to happen in order to make that work. Let's look at these cameras and say their front door, really important. Let's keep that one higher. The backyard, not so much. Let's decrease the frame rate on that. That'll help us get a little bit more storage out of all of this.
Now you can also adjust the megapixel size of the camera based on usage as well. The higher the camera megapixel, the more data you're going to record in a given period of time.
Exactly.
So it's not a simple, here's what I get if I do this. You need to look at all the variables involved. And it will take a little bit of practice. There's not just a standard formula, because without punching in all the data,
right,
this frame rate, that megapixel, you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, for instance, if you take the 8 megapixel, like Brent was saying, the 8 megapixel is a 4K image. Now, that's a lot of data. So you could say, well, we need more storage. Let's pretend, for instance, they've already decided which cameras they want to use, but they've realized that they need more storage out of something. Well, again, the backyard, not
super important.
Unless, of course, they have something stored back there that they're super, worried concerned about, and want to make sure. Exactly. But in this case, you could say, well, we need to get more storage out of something. Okay, we've already decreased the frame rate on this camera, and it's still not giving us quite enough of storage time that we want out of it. So instead, let's just decrease the resolution. This is an 8 megapixel. You could decrease it to a 4 megapixel. You could even go down to a 2 megapixel. At a 2 megapixel, you are still at a full HD image. It's a 1080p image. So you can still go down that low and still get a good quality image. If you needed to, you can go even lower than that. I don't fully recommend it myself. However, you can go much lower than that if you wanted to. So
it gets a little fuzzy at that point.
It does. I wouldn't go much lower than a 2 megapixel on that myself. Even our AHD cameras are HD image. The analog cameras are HD images. So definitely recommend that. The experts are asking, do we offer any type of design services for camera systems? Not in the official aspect, just give us a call. If you have something going on, send us the design of the layout and maybe a blueprint, if you have it, of the facility that you're trying to work with. We're happy to work with you guys on camera placements. We're happy to work with you on ideas for, like we talked about today, maximizing the amount of storage that you have available to you. Send us that information and we'll be glad to help out with that as well. So again, give us a call, 386-492-8584, or you can email me at adamr@metrohometheater.com.
Or Brent M at metrohometheater.com.
Exactly. So, anything else you have to add to this?
I think that's it for today. What's our Friday episode?
This Friday, we are going to be talking about
Troubleshooting?
Troubleshooting 102.
102.
102.
It's the little things.
It's the little things in life.
And by the way, we had this discussion yesterday.
Yes, we did.
What was it? Because I have already forgotten.
We've already forgotten it. So that was over at the house we were working on.
Yes.
And it was a switch on one of the devices. That the audio wasn't working. We had it all hooked up and everything. And I started going through the programming to find out that if I did something wrong.
Now,
save it for that day.
Here's the thing. He's being the smart man on the job yesterday. He is doing the work.
Yep.
Doing all the heavy thinking. It's like there's no audio.
I'm in deep, right?
I'm sitting there just watching him. It's like, did you put the switch on?
Did you flip that switch? Sure enough, switch wasn't flipped.
Actually, my first question was, are you sure you got the in and out?
Yes, see if it wasn't backwards. So check in with us on Friday. We're going to be talking about things like that, even ones that we've run into, like that one as well.
And it happens to everybody.
It happens to everybody. I'm really looking forward to that. Guys, if you want to check in on that video, we would love to hear the little troubleshooting things that you ran into that could have been major fiascos if you didn't catch that one little thing to check. Check in that video with us on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Let us know in the chat what you've run into. Let us know in the comments if you're going to catch that video or this video after the fact. We're happy to talk. We always keep an eye on any of the comments that are left there as well and try to respond to them as quickly as we can.
By the way, I know Leo and the experts both have lots of thoughts on that.
Yeah, we want to hear all of those. So don't hold anything back. We're all in this together. We know. We know.
Keep your stick on the ice.
Keep your stick on the ice. So everybody, what was the new one I came up with? I had a new one. I forget what it was. Well, I'll have to remember what it was. Anyways, guys, thanks for checking in with us today. We're happy to answer any and all questions about AV, surveillance, or anything else involved with that, HDMI products. So please let us know any questions that you have, and we can talk about it then at that point.
Remember?
Reboot your equipment early and often.
And I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Thank you.
We'll see you then.